Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 11. I'm so sorry. I have not filmed for this podcast in a minute. I know episodes have been coming out pretty regularly, but they've all were pre-filmed, and now it's getting to when you're seeing this, and I haven't pre-filmed anything else. So, I have to do this episode. We are talking about divination today. This is a facet of witchcraft that I'm just really intrigued by, and I don't know much about, if I'm being honest. I haven't really gotten into it as much. I'm not very skilled in it, but I'm so interested in it. So we're just going to be talking about what it is, what it's used for, different types of it, and we're just going to hop on into it because I have a Facebook group for this actual podcast, and a lot of my members are baby witches, and they're always asking questions about divination. So we're just kind of learning together, and whenever I find some new tidbits of information and we talk about it, it's just really interesting. It's a fun time, so you should definitely go check that out. The links that I use for my research, as well as links to social media, will be down below. When you're seeing this, my Etsy shop is up and going. That should also be linked down below. If not, it's just The Green Craft Co. on Etsy. The Green Craft Co. I'll try to remember to put it down there if it's not linked. But yeah, I hope you guys have been enjoying the episode so far. I've been getting really good feedback. I've been getting a lot of followers. It just makes me really happy that you guys are enjoying it. This was something that I was very nervous about. But I'm gonna stop talking. I'm sorry if I sound like a bit off. My throat is kind of hurting, and I'm also like, I haven't filmed for anything in a really long time, so. But let's kind of jump on into it. So divination is the practice of determining the hidden significance or cause of events, sometimes foretelling the future, by various natural, psychological, and just other techniques. Found in all civilizations, both ancient and modern, it is encountered most frequently in contemporary mass society in form of horoscopes, astrology, crystal gazing, tarot cards, and the Ouija board. I bet you guys didn't know that was a form of divination, but it is. So like in the context of ancient Roman culture and belief, divination was concerned with discovering the will of the gods. Today, scholars they no longer restrict the word to the root meaning. Divinatory practices and the beliefs undergirding them are greater in the scope than discerning the will of the gods and the view of the human condition that inspired so much of the early Mediterranean religious thought. In some societies, divination is a practice to which many people frequently resort, but they don't really, use it to discover the will of the gods. The idea of a godly providence controlling human affairs in societies is unusual, but many humbler spirits are often thought to intervene in troublesome ways. So while divination is most commonly practiced in the modern Western world in the form of horoscopic astrology, other forms were and continue to be of equal importance for other cultures. And when I first started getting into divination, when I really started dipping my toes in it, which I still kind of am doing, I didn't realize just how many different types of divination there are. There's even unusual types of divination, which I think I mentioned in this podcast. I'm not sure if I do or not. There's just so many, and they're all just so interesting. And they're all used for something in particular, and they all have a meaning in some sort of culture or belief. So it's just really interesting to think about. But established long ago in the hieratic or priestly discipline, a primitive theocracy such as tradition still bears the marks of the specialists who worked out its systematic techniques. The practice is now observed only as a folk or popular tradition. It's considered rash to suppose that any legitimate philosophical tradition undergirding divination survives. Only in the case of, I can never pronounce this one right, and I mean no disrespect, by the way, it's just the way that it's written, I can't tell if it's Wen Qing or I Ching. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But it's the Chinese quote-unquote classic of changes. I think it's I Ching, but I'm not quite sure. That's what it's called. But it has scholarly commentaries of any great intellectual substance accumulated over the millennia. Systematic studies of geomancy are recent, and the literature of astrology is as perishable as it is massive. Babylonian astrology, from which later forms are derived, arose in an agrarian Mesopotamian civilization concerned with the nature and affairs of the state. The mercantile, I think it's mercantile, seafaring, and individualistic Greeks absorbed the mantic system of the collectivistic floodplain civilization of Mesopotamia, elaborated on it by adding the horoscopic discipline, and transmitted it through Hellenistic, Egyptian, and Islamic science to Europe. So there's so much just to astrology and other ones. It's not. How am I trying to explain this? Don't take it at face value? I don't know if that sounds right. The point is, there's more to it than just what you think there is. They have backstories. But anyways, in the course of this transformation, a two-way relationship between a society's view of the world and its system may be seen. Various priests and scholars have made their contributions to the system, yet there is also a clear correspondence between the general character of a culture and the uses it finds for divination. So it requires only practical understanding to consult the Ouija board or use a forked stick to decide where to drill for water. Hence, people of very different beliefs may adopt the same practices, and a full correspondence between practice and belief can be expected only where both have developed in the same cultural context. Where much of the popularity of the mantic art derives from its exotic, quote-unquote, flavor, its symbolism may be a little understood. By its very nature, however, divination tends to develop as a discipline, becoming the tradition of an organized body of specialists. This is because the means to which I can never pronounce this word, diviners, most resort generally set them apart. I'm so sorry about my pronunciation. I don't know what it is about that word, I just can't get. So I'm really sorry. But that is the case even among such peoples as the Zande, I'm sorry, I mean no disrespect. I just can literally not pronounce anything ever, so I just want to say that very quickly. I'm not trying to sound like I don't care or I'm being rude or disrespectful. I just can't pronounce anything. But it's the Zande people of the Nile-Congo divide in Africa, where the resort to divination is frequent, and the most common techniques utilized there are recognized to be within the competence of ordinary individuals. There, on a sensitive or contentious issue, an extraordinary credibility is desired, and the ultimate reliability of an oracle reflects the political standing of its owner. The king's oracle, for example, is viewed as the final authority, and the royal court is scrupulously organized to guard this vessel of power, divinatory and other, from contamination. Few societies are enthusiastically given to divination as the Zande, who routinely employ it to explore their thoughts and who will not consider any important undertakings without oracular confirmation in advance. Among the Zande, the ordinary person could be considered a divinatory specialist. Elsewhere, divination is reserved for special crises, and a recognized expert must be consulted to guarantee an authentic answer. So it's kind of something that's very much, I don't want to say right, popular. Is that the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to look. I cannot gather my thoughts on this. But yeah, it's considered very popular. There are many different methods of divination that you may choose to use in your magical practice. Some people opt to try many different types, but you may find that you're more gifted in one method than others. So you should, take a look at some different types of divination methods. Like I said, there's a lot more than you probably think there are. But you should just take a look around and see which works best for you and your abilities. And even if you get into it, just remember that you might not be perfect at it, and that's fine. You just have to practice at it. I'm really into tarot and oracle cards. I suck at it. I had an oracle deck for a while now, and I still have to look at the book to kind of understand the cards I pull. So I'm definitely not a divination witch. I know there's probably like a specific word for it, like the type of witch, but I can't think what it's called. But now we're gonna kind of get into like different types of divination. So tarot cards and readings. So to people unfamiliar with divination, it may seem that someone who reads tarot cards is predicting the future, but most tarot card readers will tell you that the cards simply offer a guideline, and the reader is simply interpreting the probable outcome based upon the forces presently at work. So think of it like a tool for self-awareness and reflection, and not fortune-telling. That's just something that really annoys me personally. So, and I'm not even like a tarot card reader. It's just when I tell people that I'm interested in it, and they're just like, "Oh, you're one of those people," and they have like a bad taste in their mouth. Like, it's not what you think it is at all. Next up, the Celtic Ogham, or Ogham. So named for Ogma or Ogmos, the Celtic god of eloquence and literacy, the Ogham alphabet has become known as a tool of divination for many pagans and Wiccans who follow a Celtic-based path. Next is the Norse runes. So long ago, according to the epic sagas of the Norse people, Odin created the runes as a gift to mankind. These symbols, sacred and holy, were originally carved into stone. Over the centuries, they evolved into a collection of 16 letters, each with a metaphorical and divinatory meaning. I think runes are also so interesting. I got an altar cloth because I have a subscription box, and the theme was divination, and there's the letters on the outside of it, and it's just so beautiful. I want to learn runes so bad. That is something that I also want to get into. And next up is reading tea leaves. So there's numerous methods of divination that people have used since time began, and one of the most iconic is the notion of reading tea leaves, also called tasseography or tasseomancy. So this divination method isn't quite as ancient as some of the other popular and well-known systems, and it appears to have begun around the 17th century. Then we have pendulum divination. I have a pendulum. I've wanted one for so long. I'm starting to dip my toes into that, so I will keep you guys updated on how that goes. But for pendulum divination, a pendulum is one of the simplest and easiest forms of divination. It's a simple matter of yes/no questions being asked and answered. Although you can purchase pendulums commercially, ranging from about $15 to $60, it's not hard to make one of your own. Typically, most people use a crystal or stone, but you can use any object that's got a bit of weight to it. There are several different ways you can use a pendulum for divination. You'd be surprised what you can learn with yes and no answers. You just have to know how to ask the right questions. Now, osteomancy, or reading the bones. So the use of bones for divination, sometimes called osteomancy, has been performed by cultures the world over for thousands of years. There are a number of different methods. The purpose is typically the same: to foretell the future by utilizing the messages displayed in the bones. Lithomancy, or the divination with stones. Lithomancy is the practice of performing divination by reading stones. In some cultures, the casting of stones was believed to be fairly common, a bit like checking one's daily horoscope in the morning paper. However, because of our ancient ancestors didn't leave us a lot of information about how to read the stones, many of the specific aspects of the practice have been lost forever. Numerology. I bet a lot of you guys have heard about numerology, or like angel numbers and that good stuff. But many pagan spiritual traditions incorporate the practice of numerology. The basic principles of numerology hold that numbers have a great deal of spiritual and magical significance. Some numbers are more potent and powerful than others, and combinations of numbers can be developed for magical use. In addition to magical correspondences, numbers also tie into planetary significance. Next up, another one I'm sure so many people are familiar with: astrology. So people who have astrology have used it for centuries. For instance, early Indian, Chinese, and Maya peoples have elaborate systems to divine meaning from the celestial bodies above. In the Middle Ages, it was considered one of the most fundamental liberal arts and regarded as an authoritative source of information in the royal courts of Europe for centuries. While astrology isn't solely a divination tool, some witches find it incredibly useful for divining the future or making decisions that could have a large impact on their plans. Dowsing or divining rods. Dowsing rods are usually two L-shaped metal rods that can be used to find water, minerals, or communicate with supernatural entities. The practice dates back to the 1500s when people used dowsing rods or a forked branch to find gemstones and buried metals in Europe. In the U.S., water witching, quote-unquote, was a popular practice before we had access to public water systems. Today, ghost investigators use dowsing rods to ask questions for spirits. This next one I'm sure you've heard of, clairvoyance, and it means clear seeing. And those with this gift are said to have a sixth sense and can see energy. Often considered extrasensory perception, or ESP, clairvoyance allows a person to see things outside the typical physical perceptive range. Clairvoyance may come in the form of seeing auras, frequent daydreaming, and, surprisingly, a fantastic sense of direction. Palmistry. I'm sure you've heard of this. Maybe you're not too familiar with it, but I'm sure we've all heard of palmistry. Sometimes called chiromancy, uses the characteristics of a person's hand to determine what the future holds for them. Everything from the color of one's palm to its shape lines, and even the lengths of the fingers gives the palm reader hints about the person's present and future. That one, do you remember? Maybe it's just my school and me were weird. We would hold out our hands and our friends would pretend to be like, this is how many kids you're gonna have. This is the future you're gonna have, by pretending to read our palms. I know it's not the same thing, but I just remembered. That just came to my brain. Next up, scrying. So scrying relies on a crystal, flame, bowl of water, or mirror. To scry, one gazes at the surface of their preferred medium to relax the physical eyes and invite the spiritual third eye to the surface. Scrying is often used for accessing the Akashic record, the subconscious self, or in communicating with a deity. Some of the most popular forms of scrying are crystallomancy, or crystal gazing, pyromancy, or flame gazing, hydromancy, or water gazing, and then mirror scrying. And I'm not sure when, but I will eventually have an episode of me deep diving into scrying, because there's just so much in scrying alone. And after the next couple episodes, I have a part 1 to astrology. It's going to probably be a 3 or 4 parter. I'm going to have astrology parts kind of scattered out, not too far, but I don't want them one right after another. But astrology part 1 is going to be episode 13. So I'm going to be deep diving into some of these divination methods. But that is all I have for you guys today on divination. I can definitely do a part 2 of this if you want. I just wanted to give you guys the basics of what it is and a backstory to some of it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Like always, let me know your comments, concerns, or if you even practice any of these methods. I would be really interested in knowing. And maybe if you have some tips for me, leave them down below, because I'm really interested in them. Really any of them. But that's going to be all for me tonight, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, like always, and I will see you next Thursday at 3, and we're going to be doing a deep dive into Yule. Then episode 13 is going to be the part 1 to astrology, and episode 14 is going to be deities and how to find the one that's right for you. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!